Hello, welcome to AI in Action. My name is Maurie, and I'm here with my husband Jim. And it is Sunday evening. We missed last Sunday because I believe we were out of town.
No, we weren't out of town. You were building a shelf.
I was building a shelf. I was out of town
You were out of town building an entertainment center, actually.
for our daughter and her husband. Yes, they did a great job, and I helped them do the finishing touches. But anyway, so it is actually Mother's Day here in the United States, and
Happy Mother's Day.
thank you. I had a great Mother's Day. My kids came in, and yes, they bought me a gas grill, which is, a lot of people say that's not really that funny, but I love it, and I'm glad they did.
You're a chef.
I know.
You like cooking.
I love my new gas grill.
So
We are
yes.
also dog sitting while our other two kids are on I say our two kids, our son and his new wife have taken a delayed honeymoon trip. And so we are dog sitting their two dogs. So if you hear dogs in the background, that is what that is. We have 4 dogs in our home currently.
Yeah, that was your idea.
Not working out really well. So we are going to talk about things that are in the news, consider about artificial intelligence. First, we're going to touch on something that I believe we have touched on once before, but it's really important to us that this is happening because Parkinson's disease has affected some of our elderly grandparents in the past. So right now, AI Business News is talking about how there is an AI system that can detect Parkinson's disease from brain waves.
Yeah, I think that you and I have this, we got a fairly heavy focus to start with on medical. And we spend a lot of time thinking about medical nowadays because of our aging parents. And my grandfather did actually have Parkinson's disease. So we've both got a lot of personal experience with this. But I think the main point is that I think you're going to see more and more of these AI tools because at the end of the day, they're good at recognizing patterns. And what they're talking about here is taking brainwave data and looking for patterns and those that maybe aren't obvious to a human, and detecting early onset or just the fact that they have a higher susceptibility or whatever to getting Parkinson's disease.
I also think they can just look at a lot more sheer volume of data.
They can.
It's like, in the past, if you're a radiologist or a neurologist and you're going through your case studies, you can only go through so many test results and so many case studies every single day.
And your brain gets fried after a while.
And then you're just, it's like the words start running together and you get tired. And versus an AI system can crunch a lot more data.
24 hours a day, as long as you can afford to pay for the tokens.
Yes.
So our next one, medical, AI, again, AI business. And the FDA just cleared a tool for detecting cancer signs in bone marrow.
And it's an AI tool.
It is another AI tool. It's Scorpio Labs is the name of the company, and they're doing a bone marrow analysis for improving diagnostic capabilities for cancer detection. I love this kind of stuff because this, to me, is the positive aspect of AI. You hear so much about AI bias and AI in weapons stuff, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I really think this is a spot that we really need the help. I mean, there's so much data available. The CEO of Google said once a few years ago that medicine for the next several years is going to be more about empirical than theoretical because there's so much data to go through. So I think AI being able to go through all these different data types is a huge potential advance for medicine.
I agree. I am glad that the FDA has cleared this. I really am.
I am too. And so our next one is from New Scientist. I thought you'd find this one interesting as well.
AI that determines risk of death helps save lives in hospital trial.
Now, this was about your heart's electrical activity, to letting physicians know about patients' high risk of dying based on the electrical activity. The reason this is kind of personal I thought it might appeal to you to look at this article is because you've been one of those people in a hospital where you were in very bad condition. They were concerned about your well-being. And I think I would have felt a whole lot better if there would have been really intelligent instruments watching you throughout the night when you were in the hospital bed.
They hook you up to machines, and the machines that you're hooked up to, basically, like if you're not in ICU, those machines are just monitored in room, and then they make like alarms that they go off. If you're in ICU, which I was, those monitors are actually fed to a human at a desk that's sitting there watching all these different rooms. Well, with an
And
AI
how many rooms were
doing
they
it.
watching?
A lot. And,
Yeah.
and they have to go on breaks occasionally and they have to swat, so things happen. So, yeah, absolutely. Having something that's monitoring at all times and is watching for those, again, patterns
Mm-hmm.
that can alert somebody to come in and assist. I think it's amazing.
That's an interesting number.
So, one of the things in here is that in a randomized clinical trial with almost 16,000 patients, that's a lot of patients. I mean, normally clinical trials aren't necessarily 16,000 patients.
Right.
So,
A lot
at
of
two
data.
different hospitals, the AI reduced overall deaths among high risk patients by 31%. That's huge.
At 31% out of 16,000 patients. That's a big number. That's a lot of people.
It is. I mean, 10% is 160.
Yeah, 3 times that much. That's a lot of people.
That's
It's a
amazing.
lot. That is amazing. So I thought you would
Those
find.
people who have families, I'm sure those families appreciate that.
I've been one of those families sitting there
Yeah.
in the hospital. That's one of the reasons why that one caught my attention. So our next one, as we're moving through these fairly quickly, this one is about large language models approaching expert level clinical knowledge and reasoning in ophthalmology. Now, I think ophthalmology is
Yes.
your eyes.
Yes.
So basically, this thing's getting really good at understanding whatever it is ophthalmologists are supposed to understand to a level of a clinical. So basically, I'm assuming this is approaching doctor level, because they say expert level clinical knowledge. So in reasoning and ophthalmology. So
Wow.
this was in PLOS Digital Health, journals.plos.org. And they used different language models. GPT-4 was the highest rated one still. No one seems to be able to beat that one. It's 69% for performance. But I think the most important thing, again, this is first you recognize patterns and then you make decisions based on, or at least help a doctor make decisions based on what those patterns are telling you.
Yeah, it definitely says here that all of the ophthalmologists actually prefer GPT-4 responses, the paid version over GPT 3.5, and the accuracy and the relevance was a lot higher.
And again, what I really like about it is the doctors preferred it, which means they're using it as a tool to enhance a doctor's ability. So as long as the doctors stay sharp and don't start using this as a crutch and that they use it as a tool, then again, I think this is a huge advance.
Well, one of the things that and I've said this once before, is I worked for a neurologist there in Austin years and years ago. And one of the things I admired the most about the neurologist that I worked for, Dr. Kane, was that if he didn't know something, I mean, we cannot expect our physicians to know everything there is to
Instant
know.
recall of
Instant
all knowledge.
recall of all knowledge is just not possible. And so he would literally tell the patient, let's go look this up. Let's go figure this out together, which made the patient actually feel better about it because they knew that he wasn't just giving them some BS answer.
Okay, let's back up for 1 second. And what was he looking it up in back then?
Oh, it was just, he had just the encyclopedia of the medical encyclopedias and stuff.
Before the World Wide Web.
It was before Google. I mean, it was before. I'm sorry, but it was a long time ago. But I admired the fact that he would he would pick up the phone and call another doctor. He would do what was necessary to get his patients answers. Think about how much quicker it would have been for him
to have had an
interactive discussion on his phone with GPT-4 to ask questions.
Or on his desktop sitting there. But either way, the point is he's having this interactive discussion. He's still got all that knowledge available on the web and through other doctors and his own personal knowledge and things like that.
Think about the argument he could have with GPT-4.
I mean,
he could really have a good argument, a good medical discussion.
Sorry if I keep clearing my throat. We have a lot in the air right now here in Texas because it's been raining and it never rains here.
The mold.
My asthma is about to kill me. So I'm
don't
sorry.
Say that. We're talking medical here. Let's not talk death.
I apologize for all the coughing, but I can't help it. Anyway,
so, what's next?
Moving away from medical, we're going to start talking about AI in the context of security and good ideas and bad ideas. This particular one, the NSA releases guidance for securely implementing AI systems. One of the problems you have is how do you implement an AI system in a way that you can use it, but they tend to leak information.
Yeah.
It's really difficult for you because you can't ask every combination of every question and see how it's going to answer it. So you have to be careful about the fact that they might decide to say something that they shouldn't have said.
Explain this very first thing here. The NSA and other cybersecurity agencies recommend sensitive AI model information like weights
See that
should be protected.
one of the reasons that's a good question, and one of the reasons I put this in here is because I'm a very big fan of open source, as you well know. There's a huge argument in the world right now about, is it more secure? The weights and biases are the connections of those nodes. Without the weights and biases, the neural net is useless because it determines how data flows through that neural net, how it pulls out which token comes next, that kind of stuff. So the open source world says the best way to secure them is to release the weights and biases so everybody can evaluate these weights and biases to see whether or not they're. Now, in this context, bias doesn't mean like I'm biased against a particular person or type or whatever. This is literally how the data flows through it. So it's you could kind of argue that it's about that, but it's a different word for bias. It's part of what's called the activation function. Anyway, the open source world says you should open these. The NSA is saying if you do,
that's a security risk.
That's a security risk because now people know how the system works and they can reverse engineer. That's an age-old argument with open source versus closed source. People like OpenAI, which is ironically not anywhere near what they are because they started
open.
It's supposed to be open source.
And they got a lot of help and a lot of information and a lot of people giving open source.
Ask Elon Musk. He's still mad about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they're saying that you need to keep these weights protected, which is closed source. Open source community says that actually makes it less secure. It's an interesting argument. That's why I thought that was an interesting article. It's an AI business. I'm getting a lot of stuff this week out of AI business.
Mm-hmm.
The next one I thought you would find interesting.
Microsoft bans U.S. police departments from using enterprise AI tool for facial recognition. So basically, the police department is starting to use AI to see who people are.
Yeah.
And Microsoft came in and said, no.
They have Azure OpenAI because they basically own part of OpenAI. They certainly have access to all of their technology. And so they're saying you can't use our Azure service for that reason, for facial recognition. Now, once they got the first bill from Microsoft for using it, they probably would stop anyway. At least they would here in Atlanta because they couldn't afford the token bill they'd get from and all the other charges that Microsoft would give them. But
so
I don't know.
Why are they doing this? Why do you think they're doing it that way?
Well, because they're not 100%. And that word bias I used a second ago in the context of these activation functions and neural net nodes, it also you do have to deal with the biases of the training data itself. And I think Microsoft's concerned, first of all, about getting sued. But what if they act on a recommendation for a facial recognition match that's wrong? Microsoft doesn't want to deal with that right now. There's not a lot of legal precedent set for it. So I think they know this is coming in the future, but they're trying to right now say, what if this thing just makes something up?
It's wrong. Hallucinates.
That's what they call hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
So probably smart. This was out of TechCrunch, this particular article, but I found it interesting because of that. And then we're going to move on to why is this a horrible idea?
Now, we run across these a lot.
We do.
The things that you come in and you said, you've got to see this. You've got to see this. And I'm like, what? And he's like, come on, tell me this isn't a horrible idea. So the U.S. Marines, the United States Marine Corps,
their Special Ops Division,
decided to take the robot dog. Now, everyone has seen these videos on TikTok and YouTube.
Boston Dynamics.
Boston Dynamics.
I don't know if that's theirs or not.
I don't know who did that.
No, this was Ghost Robotics.
Ghost Robotics.
Yeah.
They do these robot dogs. So the United States Marine Forces Special Operations Command is currently evaluating a new generation of these robot dogs that are developed by Ghost Robotics. with the potential to be equipped with gun systems from defense tech company Onyx Industries. So they are actually
They've mounted a big old gun.
playing with this stuff. I would not want to be one of the military personnel that is in that open field.
They don't specifically say there's AI on this, but there is, because those robot dogs have
the
them on
dogs
there
have
for
it, yeah.
guidance, if nothing else.
Yeah.
This falls under that category of
this is a bad idea.
What worries me is half the time this kind of stuff makes it into the police. Eventually, these military weapons trickle into the local police department. Do you really want that running around the downtown?
Mm-mm.
Again, they need to watch more sci-fi movies. Every sci-fi movie says that's a really bad idea. Anyway, so I thought we would wrap up the news with
New Mexico official works to raise awareness of deepfakes.
This is your passion.
Yes,
so I'm going to let you talk about it.
So with the election season starting in New Mexico, the Secretary of State wants to make the public more aware of the ways that deepfakes and artificial intelligence can be used to manipulate information. Now, this is specifically, the article has to do with election information, like, commercials, and this official actually did not say this. And, it just happened a few weeks ago with the high school principal where somebody had done a deep fake of their voice only, of them
making a bunch of racist comments,
of rants about some racial slurs and stuff. And so the main thing they're talking about here is just politics. Now, what I am really concerned about is the pornographic deep fakes that people are going to be facing. Not just females, but males.
When you think about it, you're a female or a male running for office.
Oh, same thing.
Somebody makes a deep fake porn video with
they'd
you
still
in
get
it.
Elected.
Nowadays
they might still get elected.
They might still, but it's still, they're talking about robocalls, they're talking about voice fakes, they're talking about pictures, images. They could take someone and put them in a Nazi gathering. There's so many areas. But again, this being your passion because of your concerns, your book you're writing, the whole thing where you've got all this training material you've been working on specifically about how to help K-12 education.
K-12 education, specific, more junior high school.
At the end of the day, this term right here, this two words right here,
raise awareness.
Raise awareness. That's a heavy focus in what you're doing.
It really is.
Really is. At the end of the day, since it's almost impossible to stop it,
there is no stopping them.
No, there really is.
There is no stopping it. And the problem is, even if it is a deep fake that is absolutely 100%, you can tell that this is a deep fake, it's still in a high school environment
can do damage.
Going to do damage.
Well, and I could say, I can tell you how to stop it.
Go.
All you have to do is take any image or video that's legitimate, has to be signed using a digital signature of the person that's in it.
Right. But
hold on. So for this to work, though, this is where this whole thing kind of falls apart in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
For this to work, that means that if you see something that's not signed properly, you have to just ignore it and not believe it.
But they're not going to ignore it.
And they're also not going to not believe it. Psychologically, it's going to have an impact.
But even if they don't believe it, even if they know it's fake, it's still going to cause the bullying and the picking and the ha-ha.
So what all the AI companies are saying is we're going to start saying this is a fake. This is, we're going to make sure that this particular image or whatever that was generated using our tool is a known fake. How are you going to do that? The rule of any kind of cryptographic thing is if I can get whatever is being decrypted in clear text,
mm-hmm.
and I can get the encrypted version, that's how I can reverse engineer what kind of cryptography you're using. So how do they think they're going to do this when they're generating these images? You sign it. What are you going to watermark them? You're going to remove the watermark,
right? I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and I follow a lot of people from the UK and from other places other than the United States because let's face it, a lot of times they're ahead of us when
And when
it
it
comes
comes
to
to the
AI.
AI stuff, they are ahead of us
They're ahead of us.
in many ways.
And some of the comments that were made by some of the people across the pond is it just doesn't bother them as much over there because they don't view nudity and things like that
They're not
with
as
as
prudish
much,
as we are.
yeah, that they're not as prudish
Yeah, they
as the
say that
USA.
now, but
That's what I was going to say. There's a difference in being prudish about a photo
of you naked,
of you versus a video.
a porn video,
Yeah.
or you. I mean, what they also don't remember is this isn't always about porn.
No.
You could be they. You know, how do they feel in Germany about the Nazi Party?
Yeah.
I mean, it's illegal to fly a Nazi flag. So what if you take somebody who's running for office over there and you make a genuine looking,
Like de-age them and have them be at some rally somewhere.
yeah,
With
especially if the rally was actually occurring. So there's
Right.
actual live video of it occurring, and they just kind of subtly put you in the crowd.
Yeah.
They don't make it obvious. You're not out there talking. You're just subtly. There's so many ways this can go wrong, and at the end of the day, education is going to be a
It's about
huge
education,
part.
and for me, it's about as an administrator or a counselor about how to handle it. Not just knowing the laws that are involved and what you should do to like keep the information to where it is available for law enforcement, who to report it to, how to report it, what type of a fine or a prison sentence, or and even to the point of educating both sides as to, okay, if you do this, this is what this means. Like, for instance, we're putting in a panic button system at our school system right now. And one of the biggest things we have to do is we have to make sure that the students know if you push that panic button, it's a class A misdemeanor. You could be fined $4,000 or have up to 1 year in prison. It's just like, pulling a fire alarm.
Yep.
And so it's that education about just don't do it.
And so what does this all mean when you take this back to the trainings we've been doing since these large language models became available to the public? What have we said about about cheating, for example? It's not a tool, it's a process.
Oh, absolutely.
And what you're doing, even with your deepfakes, is you're trying to tell them there is no tool
that's going to stop it.
That's going to, which was my point earlier when I said I know how to stop it. There's no tool that's going to stop it because you can sign something as legitimate, but people can either remove that or they just don't believe you when you say that's not legitimate because I didn't sign it. Or you can say, I know this was generated by a deepfake, or by a tool, but even if you know it was generated by a tool, like you said, psychologically,
it's still there.
As a counselor, you've seen people, you've talked to kids and what the bullying and stuff can do to the psychology of that kid, or it's like having PTSD for some of these kids. So again, it's the education that's important, but you have to understand this is a process, not a tool.
Right.
Which leads us to the last few minutes. We wanted to talk about education.
Okay, so a big one for me for education. I actually just posted earlier today
on LinkedIn,
and I titled it "We Are Here," and it's one of those things that it really is starting to upset me. I'm always yelling about rural America and the opportunity divide, and let's not forget rural America because we have such a hard time in these small towns and these remote areas getting access.
Resources.
It's the resources, and I'm not talking just technological resources. I'm talking just
medical resources. Pick one.
Food resources. I'm a chef, and I would want to make a new recipe, and they're not going to have saffron at the grocery store, or whatever. So
yes.
It's just a resource problem. And so whenever I start thinking about the amount of money that these corporations are charging for these services and these tools, these AI tools that they're offering, and then I see that they're not giving any discounts.
Or not good ones.
Specific story. You called a company, you said, this is what I can afford. They were charging like $5 or $4 per user.
Per month.
That's
the problem with all these AI tools. Used to, they would say it's X number per user per year. And typically we could afford that. We buy a lot of tools. I think 50, 60, 55% of our budget now is going for all these services we have to buy. And when you look at these tools and you go, okay, it's going to cost me $5 a user. Well, we've got 2,000 students. We have 340 or 320 employees, whichever number you're going by, depending on what kind of tool it is. You start looking, well, I can afford that. But when they start saying it's $20 per month per user or $5 per month per user, the numbers get big.
It was like
It was almost
$19,200
$20,000
a year
for one tool.
for one tool. And that one tool doesn't do anywhere near what you need it to do. You have to have like multiple tools
Well,
to
I was,
possibly accomplish what you want to
I
accomplish.
was actually going to take their tool and add our own Agnes, the AI
Mhm,
tool that we
mhm.
created, was going to integrate into that tool because that tool had other functionality. And I thought it might be easier for the teachers when you put them together instead of
Right.
them having this long, because we always talk about the teachers having these long list of tools
Right.
and we're trying not to. So we were trying to take this overall tool and integrate a particular functionality into it.
But the point is, you went to that company and you said, this is what we can afford. I could do $2 per user
And that was
per
stretching it.
month. That's stretching it. We'll take some Chromebooks away from the little kids who need them, kind of thing. Whatever we'd have to do, we'd make our budget work with that. They came back and said, oh, $250. It's like they're bargaining with the
kids.
education of our future.
I know.
And it just chaps my bottom.
And
So
chaps your bottom, does it?
It does.
Does it? Okay.
So for me, I put out there on LinkedIn, I was like, okay, I see all these people and I admire them. I really do. They have got the ears of the politicians. They have got the ear of the politician. They are talking about AI policy. They're going and talking before these federal, panels and all of this stuff. And they're talking about policy, policy, policy. And my whole point was, don't forget us, because we are here and we need to make sure that, yeah, it's great that you're putting the policies there about the bias and the hallucinations and the guardrails and making sure our kids are protected. And that's great. But we also need to be able to afford it. We're not going to need to protect our kids from these tools if we can't even give them the tool.
Well, not only that, but you and I talk about this all the time. These companies come in, they release these new technologies, they release these new software, whatever, and they say to us, it's important for the future that these kids be educated on these new tools. They're saying about AI all over the place. How are we supposed to do that if we can't even afford to use it? Well, then what are your choices now? You get the big guys, you get Google, you get Microsoft. Even they're not giving great discounts on this tool. And I understand they have costs, but what is the cost of an uneducated population? What is the cost of kids who have no opportunity because they can't get access to this? We can't train them.
The economic cost is going to be huge.
And, we spent, how many years did we spend just getting fiber in Atlanta? We had to get a grant, remember?
13 years.
I spent years and years, filled out pounds of paperwork just to get better access. You could argue that, okay, well, you decided to live there, that's your problem. But I'm not these people that are here, they're not the ones that decided the next most important thing is artificial intelligence. And all the kids are supposed to.
All right. I was a counselor.
You got 1 minute.
Okay. I was a counselor. Deciding to live here is a choice for some, but for many, it is not a choice. And the reason is because they were raised here, they were educated here, their parents were raised here, their parents were educated here, and they are not able, with the lack of resources, to get out and be able to afford to live elsewhere.
How much are our taxes on our property every year? We have an acre of property. We spend $2,000-3,000.
Not that much.
And what is your sister's taxes in Austin?
$12,000
a month.
$12,000 a year.
Yeah. So sometimes you can't afford to live in the city.
No.
Either way, even if you can't, do you really want to leave the kids behind? I mean, if you're one of these companies listening, give us a break. I mean, as you said, we're here. So anyway.
All right. We are finished for the day, for the evening.
That was our rant.
So I hope that everyone had a marvelous Mother's Day, all those mothers out there, aunts, and everyone else who is acting as a mom. So we hope you guys had a great Mother's Day, and we hope that you have a marvelous rest of the week.